They said I didn't belong at that party. A pregnant wife in a simple dress, how could I step into a world of diamonds and champagne flutes worth a lifetime? I smiled, though my heart was shattering. Because the man I loved sat among them and stayed silent. But that night, as the orchestra swelled and the lights blazed, all eyes turned to the entrance. I walked in, not as the humiliated wife, but as the woman who owned the room. They called me a freeloader, but tonight, they would call me the master. The clink of crystal glasses rang out, dry as her heartbeat, pulse by pulse, faintly cracking. Paisley stood at the threshold of the ballroom. The golden glow of 100 candles spilled across the marble floor, reflecting in her glistening eyes that no one bothered to see. The Whitmore family's company anniversary gala was the event of the year. Everyone had their designated seat, marked by name and title: shareholder, partner, CEO, wife of. But her seat? It had no name, just a chair at the table's end, slightly removed from the light, where they placed spare vases and trays of untouched pastries. She rested her hand on her belly. The baby was still small, but in that moment, it was her only anchor, keeping her steady. Paisley recalled the whispers she overheard that morning, the snide giggles of her sister-in-law, the cold, metallic murmur, "She's only pregnant to trap him." And she gave a faint smile, so fragile she barely believed she could still smile. Because in that opulent room, everything was designed to remind her she didn't belong. Adrian, her husband, sat across the table, bathed in the glow of chandeliers. He laughed, shook hands, raised his glass. When their eyes met, he gave a slight nod, a reassurance as thin as thread. She understood. He didn't want to upset his mother, Eleanor. But love, if it must be hidden to survive, how much of it remains true? Eleanor, the woman with eyes like blades honed by pride. She sat at the head of the table, champagne flute in hand, her voice ringing out like a cold piano melody. "We are so fortunate to have a perfect family, a thriving legacy, and a future untainted by mistakes." The word tainted dropped into the air, and someone glanced at Paisley. She lowered her head, setting her water glass down. No one needed to say it aloud. Everyone knew. The mistake Eleanor meant was her. The table erupted in soft, cruel laughter. Paisley sat still, each sound slicing through her like a knife through flesh. But beneath her simple satin dress, her hand gripped the hem tightly, keeping herself from trembling. A server approached, placing dessert before her. She heard a whisper. They should teach her how to use a fork and knife properly. Paisley didn't look up. She stared at the candlelight flickering in her glass, seeing her reflection, a face unnervingly calm, perhaps because pain, when repeated too often, becomes familiar. As music swelled, couples left the table for the dance floor. Eleanor rose from her seat, passing by Paisley. The scent of her expensive perfume wafted over, sweet yet suffocating. She leaned down, whispering in an almost gentle tone, "You should rest, Paisley. This party, it's a bit too grand for someone like you." The words, light as a breath, unlocked a chasm in her heart. Paisley lifted her head slightly, their eyes meeting for a fleeting moment. One saw herself at the pinnacle, the other felt herself in free fall. She stood, leaving the table. No one stopped her, no one noticed or cared. Her heels clicked softly on the marble, blending with the distant laughter behind her. Outside, the city skyline glittered, but the night wind cut to the bone. She stood by the hallway's grand window, hand still on her belly. A tear fell, rolling down her wrist, catching on her simple silver bracelet. "It's okay," she whispered, as if to the baby within. "I promise, you won't grow up in this shame." Below, the music played on, distant as another world. Paisley turned, heading toward the staircase to the upper floor, forbidden to most. She needed silence and to remember who she was before this house swallowed her. In the dim light, she opened a small box on the vanity. Inside was her father's letter, its neat, sharp handwriting. "Your dignity doesn't lie in where you stand, but in how you rise." She closed the box gently, her eyes changed, no longer trembling, no longer frail. Only a chilling calm remained. Downstairs, Eleanor raised a glass to toast the Whitmore family's radiant future. Upstairs, the woman she'd just humiliated stood before a mirror, wiping away tears, whispering to herself, "If they think I'm unworthy of their party, They're about to learn who truly owns it. That night, Paisley didn't sleep. Moonlight slipped through the white curtains, falling on the bedsheets like cold silk. The room was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat slow, but resolute. Below, laughter and music echoed, distant and warped, like a dream she no longer belonged to. She sat at the desk, opening an old leather journal. Its pages, yellowed with time, held words written in moments when she needed to keep herself from breaking. She wrote of dinners where she was treated like a sponsored guest, of Eleanor correcting her every word, every gesture, every detail, as if she were a crack in their flawless glass. But tonight, her writing was different. No trembling, no tear-stained ink. She wrote 3 words: "Enough is enough." As dawn crept through the window, she remained there. Adrian returned to the room, reeking of wine and party perfume. He leaned down, touching her shoulder. "Paisley, you're still awake?" She didn't turn. "Did you have fun?" He hesitated, hands tightening. Mother was a bit tense. "You know how she wants everything perfect." "Perfect," she echoed, her voice even and light as a breath. "Even if it means humiliating your wife in front of hundreds?" Adrian didn't answer. He sat on the bed's edge, avoiding her gaze. "Don't let it upset you. They didn't mean it." Paisley turned, her eyes eerily calm. "Didn't mean it?" He stayed silent. "You know," she said slowly, "people can kill someone's self-respect without raising their voice. They just need to smile long enough." He opened his mouth but found no words. Perhaps because, deep down, he knew she was right. And because he was afraid to confront the mother he'd never defied. When he left the room, the scent of wine fading, Paisley stood. She walked to the mirror, staring at herself. The face in the reflection was pale, eyes weary, but a new spark flickered, a small, undeniable flame. She opened the wardrobe, retrieving a box of documents her father sent after their wedding. She'd never opened it, wanting only to be a wife living for love, not status. But now, her silence was no longer a virtue, it was a shackle. Inside, alongside old photos, was a sealed folder bearing the Harrison Foundation's emblem. Beneath it, a document outlined ownership and sponsorship for the largest charity the Whitmores would boast about at their upcoming gala. She smiled faintly, for the first time in months. Not a triumphant smirk, but a realization. The truth had always been in her hands. She didn't need to prove anything. She just needed to wait. In the days that followed, she lived quietly, as if nothing had happened. Eleanor hosted tea parties. Clara gossiped with friends. Adrian balanced 2 worlds. But each time they spoke, Paisley observed, no longer in pain, only taking note. One afternoon, as Eleanor showcased designs for the upcoming gala, Paisley sat nearby, flipping through a magazine. "This will be our night," Eleanor said with near-sacred pride. "All the press will be there. The Harrison Foundation just approved our funding. Can you believe it? They're sending a representative." Paisley nodded, eyes on the page, her voice soft as silk. "Wonderful. They're known for being selective." No one caught the irony in her words. But inside, Paisley knew they wouldn't wait long to learn who the Harrison Foundation's representative was. At night, while others slept, she sat by the window. Below, the garden glowed under moonlight, still as if holding its breath. In her hand was the gala invitation, its gold embossing gleaming like a jest. On the line reading, "The Whitmore family cordially invites," she added a small slanted note, "and Harrison will attend." She placed her hand on her belly, whispering to her baby, "We're done hiding, little one. One day, they'll have to face us, not with pity, but with respect." She closed the curtains, turned off the light, leaving only the faint glow of a bedside lamp. But in her heart, another light had ignited, one that would never fade. The morning of the gala, the Whitmore estate gleamed like a theater awaiting its grand performance. Servants bustled, arranging white roses in crystal vases, hanging banners proclaiming, "Whitmore Gala, a legacy of love and success." Paisley sat in the kitchen, sipping weak ginger tea. She no longer joined the frenzy. She observed, silent as a spectator awaiting the finale. From the living room, Eleanor's voice rang out, sharp as metal on glass. "Clara, double-check the guest list. No mistakes. The Harrison family is sending a representative. They're our main sponsor, understand?" Paisley glanced up, lips pursed. Those words, main sponsor, made her heart skip a beat. They still didn't know. Eleanor entered, her silver-gray silk dress flowing with each step. Light caught the pearls around her neck, dazzling. She paused, eyeing Paisley as if she were an extraneous detail in a perfect scene. "You're still here?" Her voice wasn't harsh, but cold enough to make any warmth feel forced. "Yes," Paisley replied softly. "I'm preparing a gift for the gala." "Oh," Eleanor smiled, but it never reached her eyes. "How sweet. But I'm afraid you won't need it." Paisley set her teacup down, looking up. "Why not?" Eleanor stepped closer, sitting across from her, her voice like a polished blade. "Tonight's gala is critical. It's not just a party, it's our family's honor. The press, investors, powerful people will be there. I think you should stay home." Paisley fell silent. The room seemed to freeze, clocks, footsteps, even breaths. "Stay home?" Eleanor nodded, as if granting a favor. "For your pregnancy, of course. It's too loud, too crowded. I don't want you exhausted. And frankly, the party includes people who might make you uncomfortable." "For your pregnancy." "People who make me uncomfortable," Paisley repeated slowly, her voice low. "Or people who'd be uncomfortable with me there?" The air thickened. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, her smile polite. "You're misunderstanding. I'm only thinking of you. I'm sure Adrian agrees." That name Adrian pressed heavy on Paisley's chest. She remembered his silent nights, his evasive glances. And now, hearing he agrees, she knew it was true. Eleanor stood, brushing her dress as if the conversation was over. "I'll have dinner prepared for you. Don't worry about the gala. Some things are better left to others." She walked away, leaving the scent of victory in her wake. Paisley sat still, her hands trembling slightly. Part of her wanted to leap up, to spill every truth, to throw it all in Eleanor's face. But the other part, the part that had learned to wait, to watch, to choose the right moment, kept her rooted. She closed her eyes. In the darkness, she saw her father's face, kind, steadfast. He once said, "Some battles you win by shouting, but others you win by letting silence speak last." Paisley took a deep breath. When she opened her eyes, they were dry. At noon, Adrian came home. He entered the kitchen, his face weary. "I heard Mother talking to you," he began, his voice cautious, as if fearing her anger. Paisley turned away, pouring more tea. "And what do you think?" "I think she's right. You should rest. I don't want you stressed." She let out a short, brittle laugh. "Are you worried about my stress? Or your mother's embarrassment?" He fell silent. She turned, looking at him long and hard. "Adrian, do you know what they say? That you married me out of pity. That I latched onto you to climb the ladder, and you stay silent as if you believe it." He reached for her shoulder, but she pulled back. "Paisley, I don't..." "No more excuses. You stood there, letting them humiliate me, in my own home." He opened his mouth but said nothing. His silence, once again, was the sharpest blade. Paisley set her teacup down, so gently it made no sound. "Fine," she said. "If my presence makes you and them uncomfortable, I'll stay home. But remember this, Adrian, every party has a bill, and I'll be the one signing it." She walked away, leaving him frozen in place. That afternoon, as the sky turned burnished red, Paisley sat in her room, eyeing the gala invitation. She traced its edge, her eyes gleaming with a look no one in that house had ever seen. No more sadness, no more tears, only preparation. The room glowed with the last rays of sunlight, slipping through the curtains and pooling on the floor like molten silk. Paisley stood before the mirror, holding a carefully wrapped package. A gift delivered that morning, from someone the Whitmores no longer mentioned her father. The card attached was plain, no flowers, no ribbons, just a few lines in familiar blue ink. "A queen never needs permission to attend her own coronation." Paisley read it again and again, each word sinking into her, awakening something long dormant. Inside the box, a golden dress emerged, soft, shimmering, light as sunlight, yet blazing like fire. Her hand trembled as she touched it. The dress wasn't just fabric, it was a reminder, a symbol of a woman forced to stand outside her own life, but never truly off the stage. The evening before the gala, the Whitmore estate buzzed like a hive. Perfume, heels, clinking glasses filled the air. Each family member prepared, Eleanor barked orders for perfection. Clara laughed with friends. Adrian glanced at the staircase, hoping for his wife's gaze, but dared not seek it. Paisley stayed upstairs, standing before the mirror. The light caught the golden fabric, making the room glow. She sat, rereading her father's letter. When they underestimate you, don't react. The weak need to prove, the strong simply appear. She folded the letter, placing it beside a photo of her and her father at the Harrison Foundation's first opening. Memories of childhood afternoons, when he taught her that kindness wasn't submission, flooded back like a faded film. Downstairs, Eleanor's voice rang out, commanding a servant. Prepare Paisley's dinner in her room. She needs rest, not the ballroom. Her tone dripped with authority, as if decreeing the world's order. But that world was about to shift, she just didn't know it yet. Paisley opened her jewelry box, where the Whitmores' lavish wedding gifts lay untouched. She chose one thing, the simple silver bracelet her father gave her years ago. It didn't shine like their diamonds, but to her, it held a light no money could buy: self-respect. As the clock struck 6, she heard limousine tires crunch on the marble drive. Heels clicked, gowns rustled, and Eleanor instructed Adrian, "Be proud but humble. Our family represents refinement." And absolutely, no one mentions her. Her. 2 words, but enough for Paisley to know they'd never seen her as family. Adrian paused at the staircase, looking up. She didn't appear. Perhaps he hoped for a goodbye, a glance, a sign she was still there. But nothing. The bedroom door remained shut, cold. He turned, following his mother to the car, leaving behind a void he didn't yet know he'd regret. When the last door closed, the house fell silent. Paisley exhaled, long and deep, as if she hadn't truly breathed in months. She placed her hand on her belly where a tiny life grew and smiled faintly. "We don't need an invitation, little one," she whispered. "Tonight we're not here to attend, we're here to claim our seat." And she began dressing. Each layer of fabric slid over her skin, weaving back her memories. The golden dress draped over her, fitting perfectly, graceful, proud. Under the light, its threads shimmered like sunlight breaking through the night. She brushed her hair, pinning it loosely, letting a few strands fall softly against her neck, delicate as morning dew. Then she applied a light layer of red lipstick, not for attention, but for confidence. Downstairs, her private car waited. No one knew, no one asked. She descended the staircase, her heels whispering with each step. Every footfall erased a fragment of fear. As the door opened, the night breeze carried the scent of jasmine from the garden. She paused, glancing back at the house that once made her feel small, now just a backdrop to her emergence. The limousine rolled forward. Through the window, city lights streaked by, blending with the golden glow of her dress. In that moment, Paisley realized she wasn't fleeing pain. She was walking toward it to face it, to end it, and to begin. The car stopped before the Whitmore Hall, where the orchestra's opening symphony swelled. Hundreds of crystal lights blazed, reflecting off a grand sign, Whitmore Gala, celebrating love and legacy. She took a deep breath, a faint smile blooming. Tonight, they wouldn't just see her, they'd see the woman they should never have underestimated. Outside the hall, the night sparkled like a gilded painting. Sleek limousines lined up, reporters jostled, cameras flashed like falling stars. The string orchestra mingled with lively laughter, crafting a symphony of power and pride, a sound Paisley once thought she'd never belong to. But tonight, she wasn't here to belong. She was here to change it. Her car stopped a few meters from the entrance. The driver opened the door. The night breeze grazed the shimmering golden fabric, making her dress glow like a lantern in the dark. Nearby eyes turned to her, but no one recognized her. No one imagined the woman stepping from the private car was the wife excluded from the party. Paisley paused on the steps, adjusting her dress, breathing deeply. Each breath was a reminder. Stay calm. Take your time. Don't tremble. Dignity doesn't rush. She entered the grand hall. The room was breathtaking, high ceilings, chandeliers cascading like waterfalls of light, red velvet walls, the air thick with expensive perfume. At the center was the long table where she'd once been relegated to the shadows. Now, the light seemed to seek her out. Eleanor stood near the stage, smiling for reporters, exuding confidence and elegance. She spoke of family unity, charity, and humanitarian values, words Paisley had grown tired of hearing. Nearby, Adrian chatted with an investor, his smile strained. His eyes scanned the crowd, then froze. He saw her. In that moment, his world lost all sound. She stood under the lights, in a golden dress soft as sunlight, hair loosely pinned, face serene, eyes gently radiant. No anger, no sadness, just a chilling calm. "Paisley," he whispered, his voice lost in the music. She moved through the crowd. Every gaze turned to her. Those who once sneered, who turned away, now watched, whispering, recognizing something familiar yet unbelievable. She stopped near the main table. Clara, holding a wine glass, nearly dropped it. "She actually came?" Clara stammered, face pale. Eleanor turned, her polite smile freezing as she saw the daughter-in-law she'd eliminated hours ago. "Paisley?" Her voice was cold, trembling. "What are you doing here?" Paisley smiled faintly. "I'm here to attend my family's party." Eleanor gave a thin laugh, regaining composure. "You weren't invited." "Perhaps you're mistaken," Paisley replied, her gaze steady and sharp. "The invitation was sent to me long ago, you just never read who sent it." Before Eleanor could respond, the music stopped. The MC stepped onto the stage, his voice booming. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, we'd like to honor the chief sponsor of tonight's event, the heart of the Harrison Foundation." The room fell silent. Eleanor held her breath. Adrian looked around, confused. "Please welcome," the MC continued, beaming, "Mr. Harrison and his daughter, Miss Paisley Harrison Whitmore." The room erupted in a silent shock. Whispers rose, then faded. Glasses slipped, shattering like tiny fireworks. Eleanor stood frozen, her hand gripping white. Adrian stared at his wife, the woman he'd never truly known, with stunned awe. The grand doors opened. Mr. Harrison entered, his silver hair gleaming, his walk slow yet commanding. His kind but resolute eyes locked on his daughter as he took her hand, leading her down the golden-lit aisle. The crowd parted, making way. When they stopped at the hall's center, he turned to Eleanor, his voice warm but firm. "Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore. A beautiful event. I'm delighted to attend, the place my daughter once called home." Eleanor's face paled, her lips trembled. "Your daughter?" Paisley met her gaze, no smile. "Yes, me. The one you said wasn't fit to sit at your table." The room was deathly still. The orchestra paused, leaving only the sound of racing hearts and clicking cameras. Adrian stepped forward, almost whispering, "Paisley, why didn't you say anything?" She answered softly, eyes still on Eleanor. "Because I wanted to be loved for who I am. But now I see sometimes, you have to show the world they were wrong." Mr. Harrison took his daughter's hand, guiding her to the stage. Each step erased a past insult. The spotlight hit her golden dress, making her the only flame in a sea of silence. The MC handed her the microphone. Her hand was steady. Her gaze swept the room where she'd once bowed her head. "I used to think love and kindness could make people see your worth," she said, her voice clear, unwavering. "But sometimes, you have to stand not for revenge, but to remind them respect isn't something to be given sparingly." No one spoke. Then a single clap rang out slow, hesitant, but resonant. Another followed. Then the room exploded in applause. Paisley took a deep breath. She didn't cry. She only smiled, the smile of someone who'd finally returned to her rightful place. The applause still echoed as Paisley stood on the stage, the spotlight glinting off her golden dress, enveloping her in a radiant halo. She held the microphone, her hand steady, her breath slow and even. In that moment, she felt every eye on her no longer with disdain, but with stunned silence. Mr. Harrison stepped back, yielding the stage to her. He said nothing, only nodded, a quiet gesture of pride. Paisley looked out at the audience, where Eleanor stood frozen, her lips clinging to a polite smile, her hands trembling faintly. Adrian stood beside his mother, his eyes conflicted, as if witnessing a miracle while ashamed for not seeing it sooner. Her voice rang out, soft but piercing. "I was taught that class doesn't come from the name you carry, but from how you treat others, especially when no one's watching." Every small noise ceased. She took a step forward, the light following her. "For so long, I stayed silent. I stayed silent because I believed kindness could change hearts. I stayed silent, thinking humility would soften the world. But I was wrong. Silence doesn't earn respect. It only makes them think you're unworthy of being heard. A murmur rippled, then faded. At the front, a reporter scribbled, her face alight. Cameras flashed relentlessly. True class, Paisley continued, her voice lowering, isn't measured by the table you sit at or the ring you wear. It's measured by how you make others feel when they have nothing. Her gaze locked on Eleanor. Between them was no longer a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but two worlds facing off. One built on pride, the other forged in dignity through humiliation. Someone once told me I didn't belong at their party. She paused, a faint smile flickering. But tonight, I stand here not for revenge, but to prove that sometimes, the only revenge you need is to stop needing revenge. The applause surged, louder, longer. Cameras focused on her serene face, her eyes glowing with gentle strength. Eleanor lowered her head, lips tight. A tear or perhaps sweat slipped onto her white glove. Everything she believed about status, lineage, class, unraveled before her. Mr. Harrison stepped beside his daughter, his voice warm yet resonant. I've always believed compassion is the language of the strongest. Tonight, my daughter reminded me why we began this journey, not to build power, but to restore dignity to those who've lost it. He turned to Eleanor, bowing slightly, courteous. Mrs. Whitmore, thank you for a memorable evening, but perhaps it will be remembered not just for the lights, but for the lesson we've witnessed. Eleanor forced a smile, her voice catching. I didn't know. Paisley looked at her, calm. You didn't need to know, because you didn't want to. You thought kindness was weakness, humility was submission. But tonight, you've seen kindness takes more courage than cruelty. The crowd began to rise. Chairs scraped. Then a unified wave of applause erupted. Some wept, others bowed not out of obligation, but respect. Adrian climbed the stage, eyes red. He looked at his wife, the woman he loved, feared, and failed to protect. His voice broke. Paisley, I hurt you. I let them make you feel small, but I never stopped loving you. She smiled faintly. I know, but love without respect is only its shadow. He nodded, eyes wet. I'll do anything to make it right. Paisley touched his shoulder. You don't need to change for me. Change for yourself. Because one day, our child will look to you to learn what courage means. The room fell silent. Then applause roared like thunder. Cameras captured Eleanor's glistening tears. Paisley took a deep breath, scanning the room, faces once raised in pride now lowered in understanding. She didn't feel victorious. She felt free. Thank you all, she said softly, lowering the microphone. Tonight isn't an end. It's a beginning for women forced to stay silent, overlooked, seated at the table's end. I stand here for them, and because of them. The hall erupted in endless applause. She gave Eleanor one last look. No anger, only forgiveness. Eleanor bowed her head slowly, not out of courtesy, but acknowledgement. Paisley left the stage, shoulders straight, steps calm. Outside, the night breeze swept in, cool and light, carrying the fading music. In her heart, one chapter closed, and another began, one of freedom, dignity, and fearless love. The morning after the gala, the Whitmore estate was no longer a proud fortress. It was eerily quiet, as if the walls themselves were embarrassed by what they'd witnessed. Sunlight poured through the grand windows, illuminating hallway portraits, smiling faces now looking sheepish. Paisley sat alone by the window, holding a teacup. The morning light caught her hair, highlighting a strange serenity. Outside, the garden's roses, once meticulously pruned by Eleanor, now bloomed freely, wild and heartbreakingly beautiful. Perhaps freedom had its own fragrance. She sipped her tea, hearing reporters outside the gate, their voices excited. Paisley Harrison's speech shook the elite, the woman who redefined class. Paisley didn't smile, only set her cup down, exhaling slowly. She didn't need loud victories. What she needed was the silence that followed, where people were forced to rethink themselves. The door creaked. Adrian entered, no longer in last night's tuxedo, just a simple white shirt. His eyes were somber, but something new flickered, slow, genuine understanding. He paused behind her, silent for a long moment before speaking. I don't know where to start. She turned, her voice soft as a breeze. The most important words don't need a start. They just need to be true. He took a deep breath. I was wrong, Paisley. I was afraid of Mother, of this world, of losing the honor I thought I had to protect. But last night, when you stood there, I realized honor means nothing if the woman I love is humiliated to preserve it. She looked at her wedding ring, tracing it. I never needed you to fight them. I just needed you by my side. Adrian stepped closer, sitting down, his voice low. You didn't just stand by me last night. You lifted us all. Paisley didn't reply. She gazed out the window, where sunlight danced on rose petals. Some wounds didn't need apologies, just time to heal. But in his voice, she heard something real. Not regret for losing, but the awakening of a man who'd found love's true value. Outside, a black car stopped at the gate. Eleanor emerged, smaller than usual, her face bare of its perfect makeup. She held a small wooden box. A servant whispered, "Madam wishes to see you in the garden." Paisley rose, descending the stone steps. Morning light caught her simple silk dress. Eleanor stood by the roses, where she'd once ordered every petal trimmed for aesthetics. Now, she gazed at their wild blooms, her eyes distant. "I used to hate wild roses," she said, not turning. "They don't follow rules. They grow wherever they please, uncontrolled. I thought that was chaos. But this morning, seeing them, I realized I was wrong." She turned, offering the wooden box. "This is the Whitmore family bracelet. I once said you weren't worthy to wear it, but perhaps it was never worthy of anyone but you." Paisley opened the box, revealing a delicate gold bracelet with a gleaming pearl. She studied it, then closed it gently. "Thank you," she said, "but I don't need it to know where I belong. What matters is, I've learned to stand where I choose, without anyone's permission." Eleanor lowered her head, tears falling. "I misjudged you. I thought I was strong, but I was just afraid. You reminded me that kindness doesn't weaken us. It makes us who we always wanted to be." The two women stood there, no longer mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but two people lost to prejudice, now found. Between them, the breeze carried the scent of wild roses, dissolving old grudges. Eleanor turned away, her voice soft as the wind. "If you'll allow it, I'd like to start over, not as your mother-in-law, but as someone grateful." Paisley nodded. "Forgiveness isn't a gift, it's a choice, and I choose it because we all need to begin again." Eleanor took her hand, for the first time warm. That afternoon, Paisley sat on the porch, writing the first lines of a new project. She called it the Grace Project, a program to support women underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed for their background or gender. "I don't want revenge," she wrote. "I want to create new tables where everyone has a seat." When Adrian brought tea, she looked up, smiling. He rested his hand on her shoulder, his gaze quiet but proud. "What are you writing?" "About us," she replied, "and everyone who's been forced to stay silent." They sat together, watching the sunset gild the garden. Everything was the same, yet different. This house was no longer Eleanor's or the Whitmores'. It belonged to those who dared to rise. A month later, Paisley Harrison Whitmore's name dominated headlines. No longer the Whitmore wife or charity case whispered behind hands. She was now the woman who redefined grace. Her speech spread like wildfire. Business magazines called it the moment the elite were forced to reflect. Talk shows aired her golden-dressed figure, her serene smile, her steady gaze, not arrogant, but resolute. The world was captivated because in a noisy age, one woman silenced it with dignity. But Paisley didn't bask in the spotlight. She spent her days quietly, morning tea, wild roses, her old wooden desk where she'd once written through tears. Those tear-stained pages were now the foundation of something greater, a legacy. On her desk lay a new plan, titled The Grace Project, because dignity shouldn't be a luxury. Its mission was simple yet powerful: to support women denied opportunities due to their past, their origins, or underestimation. Paisley wanted scholarships, microfunds, spaces for women to start anew without begging permission. Adrian entered, carrying 2 coffee mugs. He set one before her, eyeing the stack of papers. "Writing another chapter?" She smiled warmly. "No, the first chapter of the life we should have lived long ago." He sat across, gazing at her with respect. "Paisley, you didn't just save yourself, you saved this family from its own darkness." She paused, her eyes softening. I didn't want to save anyone, Adrian. I just wanted them to see kindness is never weakness. Outside, Eleanor strolled the garden, in a simple wool coat, pruning shears in hand. When she saw Paisley, she smiled, not superior, but grateful. She'd once said, "You showed me what I never understood. Pride builds houses, but kindness makes them homes." Paisley chose to forgive, but not forget. She knew forgiveness didn't erase memories, it stopped them from controlling her, and that made her freer than ever. One early autumn morning, Paisley held a press conference to launch the Grace Project in the old ballroom where she'd once faced humiliation and turned the tables. Today, it was no battlefield. It was a beginning. No diamonds, no dazzling lights, just faces of women from all walks, single mothers, those fired unjustly, those denied scholarships for being not refined enough. Paisley stepped to the podium, in a simple white dress. No microphone, she wanted her voice to touch their hearts directly. "I'm not here to dwell on the past," she said, "but because I believe every wound, with enough courage, can become part of the light." She shared the Gala story not as a triumph, but a message. That self-respect didn't need validation, only to be claimed. "They called me a freeloader," she said, eyes shining. "But I never forgot grace isn't something you beg for, it's how you rise without stepping on anyone." Applause erupted. Some in the crowd wept. After the event, an older woman approached, trembling, grasping Paisley's hand. "Your story made me apply for a job again. I thought I'd lost my chance. Thank you for making me believe in myself." Paisley smiled, touching her shoulder. "No need to thank me. I just showed you what you already had, you'd just forgotten." The press snapped photos, wrote stories, but Paisley didn't care. When the event ended, she stayed in the room alone. Afternoon light streamed through the windows, falling on the wooden floor where she'd once wept. She walked to that spot, touching a faint scratch on the wall where Eleanor's glass had shattered that night. She didn't wipe it away. She left it, a mark of her journey, because sometimes, cracks are where the light gets in. She spoke softly, to no one. "This isn't revenge, it's continuation. When we turn pain into compassion, we don't just win, we heal." Outside, Adrian and Eleanor waited. As she emerged, they stood. Eleanor smiled, holding her daughter-in-law's hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for turning the place we hurt you into a place where you made the world better." Paisley looked at her, her voice soft as a breath. "No one is defined by their mistakes, as long as they dare to change." Eleanor nodded. "I'm learning that, every day." The three stood in the fading light, no more words needed. Leaves rustled, the breeze grazed the wooden frame. Everything was finally at peace. One late autumn evening, the Whitmore estate glowed with warmth, not the cold gleam of crystal chandeliers, but the soft light of candles, the laughter of staff, the scent of cinnamon wafting from the kitchen, a smell Paisley never thought she'd find here. She sat on the sofa, hand on her belly. The baby kicked gently, each nudge a message from a soul yet to arrive. Outside, Adrian strung golden lights around the garden, while Eleanor sorted invitations for the Grace Project's first scholarship event. A year ago, they'd fought over elite guest lists. Now, they chose women who'd never been invited to any table. Paisley smiled faintly. Perhaps this was the true miracle, not when the world bows to you, but when it learns to rise with you. A knock sounded. She turned to see the butler with an envelope. "From the Harrison Foundation, ma'am." Inside was a photo of young women, the first Grace Project scholars. They beamed, eyes full of hope. On the back, a handwritten note from one. "Thank you for teaching us we don't need to be born in the right place to become the right person." A tear slid down Paisley's cheek, not of sadness, but gratitude, because she finally understood. Revenge was never the end. Only healing was the final chapter. Eleanor entered, carrying 2 steaming teacups. She set one down, saying softly, "Paisley, I got an invitation to the Foundation's seminar. Would you like me to join you?" Paisley looked up, surprised. Eleanor's eyes held no pride, only honest humility. She nodded. "I'd love that." Eleanor smiled faintly. "I'll wear gold. Not to compete, but to remind myself light isn't just for one person." Paisley laughed, a gentle, forgiving laugh. "There's always enough light if we open the window." Adrian entered, hands smudged with paint, sleeves rolled up. He grinned at the two women. Planning something big again? Paisley teased. Just women's talk. Don't worry, no speeches to scare you this time. He stepped closer, kissing her forehead, his voice husky. If there were, I'd still be proud. For the first time, I saw what true courage looks like. She met his gaze, eyes deep and calm. Courage isn't shouting. It's knowing when to stay silent and standing with the right person. Adrian took her hand. They sat together, watching the garden's golden lights twinkle like stars. In that moment, all three, Paisley, Adrian, Eleanor, knew they hadn't just survived a winter. They'd entered a new era of themselves. Months later, the Grace Project launched its A Seat at the Table scholarship. Hundreds of women sent thank you letters, sharing stories of leaving toxic relationships, starting businesses, loving themselves. At the first scholarship ceremony, Paisley didn't take the stage. She sat in the back, watching others shine. When a recipient was asked, "What gave you courage?" she answered, voice trembling. "A woman forced to sit at the table's end, who used that seat to build a new table." The room stood, applauding. Paisley lowered her head, clutching the old silver bracelet, her father's gift, a symbol of all he taught her. Beside her, Adrian held her hand. Eleanor smiled with pride. She didn't need to speak. Their eyes said it all. Every loss, every humiliation, every silence led to this moment. That night, back home, Paisley walked to the garden. The spring breeze carried jasmine's scent. She looked at the sky, stars reflecting on the lake. "Father," she whispered, "I did it, but not alone." She placed her hand on her belly, where her child would soon arrive, and said softly, "I'll tell you this story. Not so you're proud of me, but so you know. Never let anyone say you're unworthy." She closed her eyes. In the silence, distant music echoed the same melody from that gala night, now a lullaby. No resentment, no bitterness, only grace. Because in the end, revenge doesn't need to win. It only needs to become kindness. If you've followed this far, perhaps you've felt moments like Paisley's when your kindness was mistaken for weakness, your humility used as an excuse to belittle you. But remember this, you don't need to shout to be seen. Sometimes, standing tall, walking into the light with a calm heart, is enough to silence the world. Paisley didn't fight back with blows. She answered with composure, with success, and by creating a path so others wouldn't endure what she did. And perhaps that's the only victory worth keeping, when you not only rise, but help others rise with you. If this story touched you, share in the comments what you've silently endured but ultimately overcame. Share it with someone who needs to hear. Grace isn't weakness, it's the strength of the underestimated. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about hurting them. It's about teaching them respect.